One major development going on now involves more to do with Rachel Zegler and her attitude towards South Park Studios and Paramount after learning about what they are planning for their upcoming special called the DEI Special.
The last time I had the dream, I was walking down the school hallway, and that's when I started to notice that something's wrong. Everyone I cared about has been systematically replaced. And finally, I want to scream, and I'm like, why are they replacing every single character with someone who is diverse?
Rachel Zegler's role in the 2025 Snow White remake has stirred nonstop controversy, drawing fire from devoted fans of the 1937 classic and skeptical modern viewers alike. From the start, her involvement became a lightning rod for backlash, especially after she made headlines for criticizing the original storyline as outdated. Her apparent disregard for the film's most beloved elements only added fuel to the fire, all while reports of growing behind-the-scenes chaos kept tensions at an all-time high.
Exactly what they're doing, and that is why we hate the diversity, equity, and inclusion casting and writing in movies.
Especially her rumored feud with co-star Gal Gadot. But things took a wild turn when South Park jumped into the chaos, airing a no-holds-barred parody that brutally mocked the Snow White disaster, complete with a cartoon version of Rachel herself. The segment may have been short, but it hit hard, and within hours, the clip exploded online. Reports quickly surfaced, claiming Rachel Zegler was furious over the portrayal, feeling it piled even more public humiliation onto an already overwhelming mess she was struggling to manage.
Now active involves more to do with both South Park Studios and Paramount, and what they recently did toward both Zegler and the Disney company for their Snow White film. It turns out that both Trey Parker and Matt Stone are already preparing for the DEI special that is set to serve as a sequel to the Panderverse.
The reaction inside Disney was one of alarm, as if Bob Iger and the top brass didn't already have enough fires to put out. With a string of underwhelming releases, the Daredevil Born Again fiasco on Disney+, and growing concerns over Marvel's recent slump, the last thing the company needed was Snow White becoming a punchline on mainstream animated satire. The South Park parody only intensified existing fears, spotlighting just how far this high-budget fairy tale had spiraled out of control.
Snow White is the first American feature-length animated movie. 1937. It's one of the most beloved movies of all time.
South Park's creators, long known for stirring up controversy, have a track record of mocking celebrities and pop culture with brutal, no-filter humor that often leaves their subjects reeling. This time, their latest target was Rachel Zegler. The animated version of her was shown ranting at everyone in sight, hurling dramatic criticisms at the 1937 Snow White, and declaring the remake was about saving society, all while brushing off her co-stars and the fictional Disney executives trying to rein her in. From the moment the episode aired, the internet exploded. Memes flooded social media, fans picked apart each joke with glee, and speculation ran wild. Would Disney's higher-ups dare to respond publicly? Clips of the parody spread like wildfire, with viewers quickly pointing out how closely the exaggerated version of Zegler mirrored her real-life interviews. One scene, in particular, struck a nerve. An animated meltdown where Snow White panics after realizing she's outshining the evil queen. It was so on the nose, fans couldn't believe how close satire came to reality.
Even if everything worked perfectly, it would have been almost impossible for this movie to succeed, because you're comparing it to one of the most beloved films of all time and a truly groundbreaking movie.
Even people who had only been vaguely aware of the Snow White drama suddenly found themselves pulled into the chaos, thanks to South Park's brutally funny take. The episode became an instant cultural flashpoint, and in the hours that followed, hashtags like #SnowWhiteFiasco and #Rachel Zegler trended across social media, often appearing alongside sharp commentary on Bob Iger's leadership and Disney's growing list of PR headaches. Then came the fallout. Word quickly spread that Rachel Zegler was privately furious about the parody. According to industry insiders, she felt completely blindsided. Sources close to her camp said she saw the portrayal as cruel and unfair, painting her as an out-of-control diva who hated the original Snow White. At one point, she even considered releasing a statement to set the record straight about her real feelings toward the 1937 film, but Disney allegedly stepped in fast, urging her to stay silent. The fear? That speaking out would only make the controversy worse. This all unfolded against the backdrop of a prior corporate strategy that had already begun limiting her public visibility, canceling major talk show appearances and event spots, creating quiet but growing tension between Rachel and Disney execs.
Our rights are on the line, folks.
Bitch! The right to buy Cosby sweaters?
Come on.
That's the face of a serial killer.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, just hit the unfollow button.
In the weeks leading up to the South Park takedown, a wave of talk show bookings and promotional appearances for Rachel Zegler were suddenly and quietly scrapped by Disney. Official press releases blamed scheduling conflicts or last-minute adjustments, but insiders weren't buying it. Many claimed the real reason was simple. Disney wanted to keep her from saying anything else that might stir the pot. After all, her earlier interviews, where she boldly spoke about revolutionizing the Snow White mythos, had already rubbed longtime fans the wrong way, alienating those who cherished the original.
You don't particularly see people who, look like me or are me playing roles like that. So it was definitely, when it got announced,
White!
He wasn't a stalker, by the way.
Thing that was trending on Twitter for days because all of the people were angry.
Rumors of behind-the-scenes tension between Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot only added fuel to the fire, especially after a painfully awkward awards ceremony where the two noticeably avoided eye contact. The moment didn't go unnoticed, and it deepened the sense that something was seriously off with this production. Behind the scenes, Disney execs were reportedly in panic mode. Their once reliable formula of remaking beloved classics now looked like it was crumbling, sparking heated debates on how to manage Zegler's increasingly controversial public image.
It's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White.
That
is
not going to be saved by
You
the
wrote
prince.
it?
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
Some insiders argued that Disney's attempt to breathe new life into the 1937 classic may have gone too far, disrupting beloved story elements in favor of heavy-handed messaging that stripped away the original magic. On the flip side, others insisted that modern audiences expect updated values and that a reimagined tale should reflect today's cultural standards and sensibilities.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Say it louder so your other eye can hear you.
Yet despite the heated debates behind the scenes, no clear consensus ever emerged, and the meltdown only became more public. Then came the South Park spotlight. By mocking the entire fiasco, including Rachel's much-discussed comment that the original Snow White felt outdated and unfit for modern times, the show launched the controversy straight into the center of mainstream pop culture. For a few days, this was no longer just a story about an actress criticizing a classic or feuding with her co-star. It became something much bigger.
It was supposed to come out like a year and a half ago, and then we went after them so hard because of their variety of ridiculous sins that they actually went into full-scale reshoots on Snow White when we announced that we had a competitor.
Critics warned that this marked serious trouble for a film already hanging by a thread. It simply couldn't survive another wave of bad press. Over the weekend, social media users noticed what they believed were cryptic posts from Rachel Zegler, hinting at frustration, possibly taking subtle jabs at the South Park parody.
It was the first animated film that had the kind of Disney magic that had depth, that had absolute, it was riveting, and it's based, of course, on a Brothers Grimm story.
Some pointed out that comedic caricatures, while entertaining, can sometimes drown out serious conversations about progress and representation. A portion of fans sympathized with Rachel, arguing that South Park's satire, though hilarious, might have oversimplified complex issues into punchlines. Still, many others felt the show perfectly captured public exhaustion, with yet another Disney remake steamrolling a cherished classic. Reactions were all over the map, with fresh memes mocking the idea of Snow White leading a crusade to fix society.
And this started with the movie star Rachel Zegler, who I believe would be categorized as a loudmouth dope.
Just as South Park had hinted in its biting parody, Disney seemed either unable or unwilling to mount any kind of strong defense. Behind the scenes, executives were reportedly terrified that responding would only escalate things, opening the door to even more mockery. After all, history had shown that public pushback only fueled South Park's comedic fire. Still, the radio silence didn't go unnoticed. In fact, it only fueled rumors of chaos within the company. Whispers spread that Bob Iger and the board were holding near-daily meetings, scrambling for a way to keep Snow White 2025 from becoming an outright disaster.
As an actor,
you don't get to dictate anything. You don't get to dictate if a film actually happens. You don't get to dictate when it is shot, how it is shot, if you can ever speak about it to the public. You are simply just there to show up and say your lines and look the way they want you to look.
At that point, it may have already been too late. With every new leak, whether about Rachel's behind-the-scenes outrage or the brutal TV parody, public attention drifted further from the film itself and deeper into the surrounding spectacle. The controversy had officially eclipsed the movie. Meanwhile, Rachel Zegler's relationship with Disney was rapidly deteriorating. Insiders claimed she felt abandoned by the studio, frustrated that no one had stepped up to defend her against the mounting criticism. She reportedly believed that the decision to pull her from talk show appearances violated parts of her contract that guaranteed promotional opportunities. Tensions rose behind the scenes, with her team quietly exploring potential legal action against the company.
God forbid a woman dream about true love. We're all just sitting around here, maybe I could be president one day. I hate men, I just want to be president. That screams Disney princess. Oh my God, I'm literally getting enraged. Once again, I feel like I'm back in 2022.
Whether it was a serious legal threat or just a high-stakes negotiation tactic remained unclear. Still, the mere possibility of a legal showdown between rising star Rachel Zegler and a media giant like Disney sent the rumor mill into overdrive, especially in the wake of the explosive South Park parody. And as if the drama wasn't thick enough, Gal Gadot's role in the mess grew even more complicated. Originally cast in a major role, she was a big draw for fans eager to see her take on the evil queen. But whispers of behind-the-scenes tension with Zegler burst into the spotlight when the two visibly avoided each other at a major public event.
Yeah, the entire film's about a love story. It's about a love story because that's what the point of the film is. And I'm sorry that chivalry in a man pursuing you is now deemed as stalking, which now it's kind of making sense why men are opting out of the dating scene.
Speculation exploded over alleged creative clashes between the film's two stars. Rumors swirled that Rachel Zegler had taken issue with Gal Gadot's improvised lines, reportedly feeling they hijacked pivotal scenes meant to spotlight Snow White. Things got so tense that whispers of entire sequences being cut to placate Rachel began making the rounds, and fans were eating it up. These rumors only intensified after South Park's brutal parody, which featured its Snow White character furiously yelling at a cartoon evil queen for stealing the spotlight. Suddenly, the satire didn't seem all that exaggerated. For many fans and casual observers alike, the entire fiasco began to feel surreal. On one side was a passionate audience convinced the film was steamrolling a beloved Disney classic, and on the other, a swirling storm of behind-the-scenes chaos no one could look away from.
I was scared of the original cartoon. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. I watched it for the first time in probably 17.
On the other side of the debate were those who championed modernization, viewers who applauded Rachel Zegler's bold ambition to reimagine Snow White as a more relevant, contemporary heroine. Some fans were genuinely curious to see how the final film would balance classic Disney charm with modern themes. But the relentless wave of negative buzz, fueled by swirling rumors, high-profile cancellations, and now a satirical roast from one of pop culture's biggest comedy shows, threatened to completely overshadow the movie itself. Any chance of a fair reception was quickly slipping away. The scrapped promotional efforts only made things worse. Reportedly, top-tier late-night interviews were pulled, a planned Saturday Night Live costume segment was axed, and a rumored grand musical showcase at Disney World vanished without a trace. Each time fans looked forward to seeing Rachel in the spotlight, vague, scheduling conflicts were cited at the last minute. But according to insiders, the truth was far more calculated. Disney was simply too nervous to risk another off-script moment. Letting Rachel speak freely, they feared, was just too risky.
On the original production, I was scared of it. Oh, it was so weird. It was a stalker. Like, I feel like if you are taking on the most iconic Disney role ever, genuinely, like this was the most prolific Disney film, I feel like you should kind of have some sort of reverence for the original production.
The one anonymous source called it a preemptive strike. Disney's move to silence any more drama that could ignite fan outrage. With the South Park episode blowing up online, insiders claimed Disney's PR team was on red alert, bracing for another comedic ambush if things went further off the rails. Bob Iger, who returned as CEO with a reputation for steady hands during chaos, suddenly found himself at the center of a storm he couldn't steer. To many critics, the Snow White fiasco was more than a one-off blunder. It was a flashing red sign that Disney's once golden strategy of reimagining classics had become reckless. With recent box office failures piling up, Iger could not afford another high-profile flop. And this time, the backlash wasn't just hitting the film, it was poisoning Disney's entire brand at a time when competition was fiercer than ever.
In addition to that, there was already an uproar about her being cast as Snow White because she is not Caucasian, she is a Latina, she is half Colombian, and so people were like, why were you cast in the first place? We just had a black Little Mermaid, now we're having a Latina Snow White, and she is literally called Snow White. This doesn't make sense.
Meanwhile, Rachel Zegler looked increasingly cut off from the studio that once backed her. While some fans continued to support her, others, especially older viewers, blasted her for what they saw as a dismissive attitude toward the 1937 original. Younger fans, in turn, claimed she was being silenced by a studio desperate to avoid more negative headlines. Others weren't so sympathetic. They pointed to South Park's cartoon Meltdown as proof that Rachel had lost sight of her role in the film's reinvention. And behind the scenes,
this is really a bad movie, and I apologize to Walt Disney himself. I'm sorry.
Production leaks painted a grim picture, a tense set, endless reshoots, and a messy third act still being rewritten in a panic. Observers began wondering if Disney was rethinking its entire strategy. Bob Iger even hinted in interviews that the company would scale back on risky messaging. Some believed the Snow White mess directly influenced this shift, but if the final film still leaned heavily into social commentary, those changes might just be surface-level tweaks to quiet critics, not real change. While execs scrambled, Rachel's public image took hit after hit. Once seen as a rising star, she was now tangled in a PR disaster. Casting agents were watching closely. Could she handle controversy, or was the pressure cracking her image?
And to everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her. And I can only hope that despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
Some said she should have been more graceful. Others swore she was being unfairly blamed for a corporate meltdown. Either way, South Park's portrayal turned her into a pop culture lightning rod. While some viewers saw the parody as just another part of the circus, many felt it perfectly captured the chaos. The original Snow White, no matter how iconic, was always going to be updated, but this had turned into a complete spectacle. Though a few fans were still hoping the film could pull through with strong performances or stunning visuals, those voices were drowned out by scandal after scandal. From canceled appearances to rumored on-set blow-ups, every new twist dragged the project deeper into controversy. And South Park didn't stop at Rachel, it ripped into Disney too.
Behind the scenes, you guys know as well as I do that those executives like Spielberg are looking at that, saying, Rachel Zegler can F right off.
The episode showed clueless execs in crisis mode, scrambling to control Rachel's rants while the marketing plan unraveled in real time. It was a joke, but one that hit way too close to home. Surprisingly, some people even felt bad for Disney leadership. Trying to modernize a legacy film without upsetting loyal fans? That's no easy task. As for Rachel, rumors swirled that she was already eyeing projects beyond Snow White, hoping to move on from the chaos. But whether Hollywood would let her escape the shadow of this disaster, that was still up in the air. Hollywood may forgive flops if they make money. But if Snow White bombed, some feared Rachel's reputation could take years to rebuild.
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird. Super weird. So we didn't do that this time.
The image of her losing it over the original story, and then again over the parody, risked defining her entire career. The drama reached a point where facts and rumors blurred together. Some said an entire musical number was cut because of the South Park fallout. Others whispered that Rachel's scenes were being trimmed while Gal Gadot's role was beefed up to shift attention. There were even talks about delaying the release, again. With no clear answers, fans filled in the blanks with whatever version of the story they found most scandalous. Analysts weighed in too, calling the whole mess a perfect example of reboot culture gone wrong. Studios walking a tightrope between honoring tradition and injecting modern themes, it was a recipe for backlash. Rachel, in pushing for a bold modern take on Snow White, had accidentally triggered a storm no one could control. But it wasn't just one thing that caused the explosion. It was a perfect storm.
But you are not entitled to call for Trump supporters to be harmed. Like, you are actually not entitled to do that. And so let me just remind you, Rachel Zegler.
A lead actress criticizing the original, a panicked studio, on-set tension, marketing chaos, and a viral cartoon that turned the whole thing into a joke. Now, with the release date looming, Snow White 2025 became a warning sign of how quickly a blockbuster can spiral out of control. Rachel was locked in a silent standoff with her own studio. Bob Iger was scrambling behind the scenes, Gal Gadot stayed quiet, but the rumors around her rift with Rachel only grew louder. Everyone was asking the same question. Would this movie be a bold reinvention or a headline-fueled disaster? Either way, South Park had already shaped the public's view, painting Rachel as the face of the chaos. And if she was truly as upset as insiders claimed, that fury wouldn't fade anytime soon. Disney, meanwhile, stuck to silence, afraid that any public statement would spark more ridicule. The company's once polished image looked cracked, brought down by one actor, a growing backlash, and a cartoon that turned real-life drama into punchlines. Whether the movie redeems itself or not, Snow White 2025 and Rachel Zegler are already cemented as cautionary tales in the age of modern reboots. Fans will argue over whether she was brave or reckless. Critics will debate if Disney blew a golden opportunity, and that South Park episode, it will live on as the moment this meltdown hit the mainstream. Long after the credits roll, people will remember what went down. Rachel's early comments, the clash with Gal, the axed interviews, and the parody that pushed it all over the edge. Whether she really lost it or just got lost in the mess, one thing is clear. Disney was left scrambling to fix a storm that never stopped growing. In the end, Snow White 2025 showed just how risky it can be to touch a beloved classic. One wrong move and you're not just dealing with backlash, you're facing a full-blown cultural eruption. When satire, scandal, and corporate panic collide, even a fairy tale can turn into a PR nightmare.